In 2001, two researchers named Alexandra Robbins and Abby Wilner published a book that named something millions of people were quietly going through. They called it the quarter-life crisis. Since then, real psychologists have studied it. Oliver Robinson at the University of Greenwich has done years of research showing that roughly 75% of people between 25 and 35 go through a clearly identifiable crisis period. 3 out of 4. That's not a niche struggle. That's a generation. Robinson's research breaks it into 4 phases. First, you feel locked into choices that don't feel like yours. The job, the city, the relationship, the major. It looks fine on paper. It feels like wearing someone else's clothes. Second, you start pulling away. You ghost the group chat. You feel weird at family dinners. You can't explain why you're tired. Third, you rebuild, slowly, awkwardly. You try things. You quit things. Fourth, you come out with a clearer sense of what's actually yours. The point is, this isn't a glitch. It's a process. The people who tell you that struggling in your 20s means you've failed don't understand basic developmental psychology. The struggle is the development. The discomfort you're feeling right now, that's not a sign you're broken. That's a sign your brain is finally running its own software instead of the one you were handed at 17. And here's where it gets interesting. Research on identity development by James Marcia found that people who go through what he called an identity crisis, meaning they actually question and explore who they are, end up with stronger psychological well-being long-term than people who skip the questioning and just adopt whatever identity their parents or culture gave them. The ones who never feel lost, they're often the ones who never really find themselves either. They just inherit a self. You've been sold a timeline. Graduate at 22. Career by 24. Serious relationship by 26. House by 28. Married by 30. Kids by 32. Figured out by 35. Whose timeline is that? It's nobody's timeline. It's a leftover from a 1950s economy that doesn't exist anymore. In 1960, the average person bought their first house at 23 because a single income could cover it. The average person got married at 22 because the social pressure was overwhelming and divorce was illegal in half the world. That world is gone. Your brain knows it's gone, but your anxiety hasn't gotten the memo. Here's something that might shift things. Neuroscientists used to think the brain was fully developed by your early 20s. Then better imaging came along, and they realized the prefrontal cortex, the part that handles long-term decision-making, identity, planning, doesn't finish developing until around 25. For some people, closer to 30. So when you're 22 trying to choose a career for life, you are literally making a permanent decision with a brain that isn't done cooking. It's like trying to make a 30-year financial plan during an earthquake. This is why the choices you made at 19 feel weird at 24. You're not the same person. You're not supposed to be. The pressure to pick a lane at 18 and stay in it is one of the most psychologically out-of-step ideas our culture still pushes. The data says exploration in your 20s predicts higher life satisfaction at 40. The data says people who took longer to commit to a career path were not behind. They were collecting information. There's a study by Meg Jay, the clinical psychologist who wrote The Defining Decade, and a lot of people misread her work as you must lock everything in by 30 or you're cooked. That's not what she said. She said the 20s are when identity capital gets built. Identity capital is anything that adds to who you are. A weird job, a failed relationship, a move across the country that didn't work out, 6 months living with your parents while you figured out what you wanted. That's not lost time. That's the entire raw material of becoming a person. The people you see online who seem to have skipped the messy part, most of them didn't. They edited it out. The ones who actually skipped it tend to hit a wall around 32 when they realize they built a life on someone else's blueprint. Then they go through the crisis anyway, just later with more obligations. Here's the part nobody wants to admit. The reason you feel behind isn't because you're behind. It's because you're comparing your unedited inner experience to 1,000 carefully edited outer performances. Every day. For hours. There's a concept in social psychology called the highlight reel effect. When you scroll, your brain doesn't process what you see as curated. It processes it as data about reality. So if you see 50 people in a single hour announcing engagements, promotions, trips to Tokyo, side businesses pulling 6 figures, your brain quietly logs that as the average. You're not comparing yourself to one friend. You're comparing yourself to the statistical impossibility of a feed engineered to show you only the peaks of thousands of people's lives. A 2018 study from the University of Pennsylvania found that limiting social media to 30 minutes a day for 3 weeks led to significant reductions in loneliness and depression. Not because the apps are evil, because the apps don't show you reality. They show you a slot machine of other people's wins. And your nervous system can't tell the difference between watching 100 people succeed and being surrounded by 100 people who are succeeding while you're not. There's another piece. Researchers call it the spotlight effect. We dramatically overestimate how much other people notice and judge us. You think everyone sees that you're not where you should be? They don't. They're too busy worrying that you can see they're not where they should be. Everyone in their 20s is performing certainty they don't feel. The Instagram caption is confident. The person typing it is in their bathroom, anxious, Googling whether it's normal to cry on a Tuesday for no reason. It's normal. It's so normal it's almost the defining experience of your generation. And one more thing about social media that actually matters. The algorithm doesn't show you what's true. It shows you what gets engagement. People announcing massive wins gets engagement. People in the messy, ordinary, slow middle of building something don't post about it because nobody claps for it. So 99% of real progress is invisible online. What you're comparing your real life to isn't other people's real lives. It's a museum of curated peaks with all the construction zones cropped out. If you walked into a museum and felt bad about yourself for not being a Renaissance painting, you'd recognize that as ridiculous. Your feed is the same thing. It's a museum. Treat it like one. Visit, leave, don't move in. Try this reframe. Lost is the word people use for someone who's still searching. Found is the word people use for someone who stopped. That's it. That's the whole difference. If you're 24 and you don't know exactly what you want from your career, your relationships, your values, your aesthetic, your future, that's not a problem to fix. That's a brain doing exactly what it's supposed to do at 24. The certainty you see in older people you admire. Most of it was earned through a lot of years of being where you are right now. They didn't have a shortcut. They were just willing to sit in not knowing long enough to actually find out. There's a concept in psychology called negative capability. The poet John Keats coined it, but psychologists picked it up. It means the ability to be in uncertainty without immediately reaching for an answer. It's a skill. It's one of the most important skills a person can build. And our culture, especially online, makes it almost impossible to practice. Every problem must have a 5-step solution. Every feeling must have a label. Every life must have a niche. The pressure to be sure is constant, but the people who develop a tolerance for not knowing make better decisions. They don't lock themselves into the wrong career out of panic at 23. They don't marry the wrong person to feel less behind. They don't pick a major because everyone else seemed to know what they wanted. They sit with the discomfort. They let the answer come from real information, not from anxiety. So instead of asking what should I be doing with my life, try asking what am I actually curious about this month. Instead of asking why don't I have it figured out, try asking what am I learning about myself this year that I didn't know last year. The questions that come from anxiety give you anxious answers. The questions that come from curiosity give you better information. You don't owe anyone a 5-year plan. You don't owe Instagram a thesis statement on your identity. You don't owe your relatives a clean answer at the dinner table. You're allowed to say, I'm figuring it out. That sentence is honest. It's also more accurate than 90% of what the people around you are saying. CTA 1213 Min. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, honest, no fake positivity, no 5-step productivity hacks, no pretending life in your 20s is supposed to look a certain way, subscribe. That's it. No big speech. We're a small channel trying to make videos that actually meet you where you are instead of selling you a fantasy. If that's the channel you want to exist, the subscribe button is how you tell the algorithm to let it exist. Outro 1315 Min. One last thing. If you take nothing else from this, take this. The feeling that you're behind is not evidence that you're behind. It's evidence that you're paying attention to your own life. People who never feel lost in their 20s are often the ones who never really showed up for the question of who they are. You showing up for the question, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it makes 1 a.m. harder than it should be, is not a weakness. It's the work. You're not late. You're not behind, you're not broken. You're 22, 24, 26 in the middle of building a self and the construction is loud. That's normal. That's the assignment. Be patient with yourself the way you'd be patient with a friend going through the exact same thing. Because they are, all of them. Even the ones who look like they're not. That's all for today. Take care of yourself this week. Feeling lost in your 20s, you're not behind, you're not broken. You're going through something psychologists have been studying for decades, the quarter-life crisis. And the people who come out of it stronger aren't the ones who skipped it. They're the ones who stopped trying too. This video unpacks why feeling lost at 25 is actually a sign your brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. We go into real research on identity development, why the timeline you've been sold doesn't match how brains actually work, how social media distorts your sense of where you should be, and a different way of holding the uncertainty that doesn't require pretending you have it all figured out. No fake positivity. No five-step plans, no grind culture. Just an honest conversation for anyone in their late teens and 20s trying to figure out who they are without losing their mind. If you want more honest content like this, subscribe. Timestamps 0000, hook 00, 15 intro 00, 45 the quarter life crisis is real 03, 00, the timeline was always a lie 06, 00, why your phone is lying about everyone else 09, 00, lost is just the word for searching 12, 00, subscribe 13, 00, one last thing quarter life crises feeling gloss gents 20s self-improvement.